Okay, so good morning and welcome to the continuation of this series of classes on Buddhist psychology. And so Geshe-ma very kindly led several classes already. And I'm going to be teaching today's class, and then Geshe-ma is going to teach next Sunday. And then we've got a few more classes until the last class would be March 1st, okay? And so this is a huge topic, and there's a lot to delve into, and it's, I hope, if nothing else, I hope the series of classes offers you a little introduction, a little taste to this topic, so that you will be enthusiastic about it, and will continue to pursue more detailed studies as you continue learning about Buddhism. This is really one of the core topics, like if you understand a little bit about how the mind works, then everything else, makes sense, right? Because we're talking about transforming our minds, right? From an ordinary, contaminated, polluted state of existing to that of a fully enlightened Buddha. And that involves transforming the way we think, right? And so to, set our motivation for engaging in this course of study, then we take heartfelt refuge in the Buddha, in the Buddha's teachings, the Dharma, and the Sangha, all of the spiritual friends who support us on the path. And so our motivation from the moment we wake up in the morning, until the time that we go to sleep at night, has to be one of getting to know ourselves, the way our minds work, and being able to watch our minds with introspection, mindfulness, and vigilance, using those as our tools to be able to purify any harmful ways of thinking, cultivating loving kindness and compassion, so positive mental qualities, putting it all together as a basis for our understanding of emptiness to uproot ignorance, right? That's kind of the overview, the windshield tour. So we're starting with, the number one question is, who am I, right? Who am I? What is the self? Right? How do I interact with external phenomena? How do I relate and control, so to speak, our inner landscape, right? And so what's the relationship between the self and phenomena? And so in order to break free from the sufferings of samsaric existence, like the super cold weather, we need to realize emptiness, right? And so the object of negation that emptiness helps us uproot, that is uprooted, is our belief in a truly existent self, right? And that means a permanent self that exists independent of causes and conditions, right? And the basis of this innate consciousness, thinking I, right? That's with us, all throughout time. That innate consciousness is grounded in this ignorance that I just mentioned, this ignorance that accepts things to exist the way they appear, right? It doesn't question that things appear to exist, inherently. It just, as we go about our day, we just assume that, as we interact with ourselves and with our objects, other objects, that's the way we take it at face value, right? And so, it's important to note that ignorance is not just like a passive acceptance, but it's a very active misapprehension. It's a very active misknowing or misunderstanding of the nature of self and phenomena, right? And so it mistakenly assumes that things exist by way of their own nature. They exist inherently, right? And so without understanding this process, this way in which our minds interacts with the appearances that it encounters and conjures up, and then accepts them without questioning, right? So unless we understand that whole process, then there's no way that we can uproot this fundamental ignorance, right? So the key to eliminating this ignorance, these blinders, these thick dark glasses that we're wearing all the time, right, is to understand how the mind works. Right? And so there are many different ways of categorizing consciousness, so the first of these approaches that Geshe-la started talking about in the previous classes is that sevenfold typology, okay? So before we dive into that, I just wanted to take a little bit of a step back because I think we're all coming from different backgrounds. And the sevenfold typology, before we explore that, the nature of consciousness along those lines, it's really important to, at a very fundamental level, we need to have a sense of who we are and how phenomena exist from the perspective of the five aggregates. And we'll talk a little bit about the 12 sources and 18 constituents, because that's a really good starting point for then exploring consciousness, itself, right? So I think that, this idea or this classification of the five of things into seeing things as centered around this idea of the five aggregates is probably not something new to you, but the five aggregates includes all impermanent phenomena. And so when we talk about the self, the five aggregates are the basis of designation of the person, right? So on the basis of these five aggregates, which we're going to go through in a second, then we say, oh, well, we use those as the basis for identifying a person, okay? So 4 of these are material in nature and 1 is mental. So we talk about form, right? And form refers to the objects apprehended by our sense consciousnesses, and there are color, shapes, sounds, odors, tastes, and tangibles, okay? And so if you're studying debate, then one of the first subjects that you tackle is each of these, the definitions for each of these physical objects. So colors, shapes, sounds, odors, tastes, and tangibles. And so in relation to the person, then this idea of form refers to the body. So that's form. And, for each of these, we're going to do a little meditation after we talk about these. But, we'll be going through and just, again, identifying how the mind encompasses, all of these different aspects of experience, right? We're talking about experience, right? So keep that in mind as we go through these. So that was form. The second, again, you probably know these. The second is feeling. Feeling is the mental factor of pleasure, pain, or just a neutral experience, neither pleasure nor pain. So that's feeling. And so you're bringing together all of the many different kinds of feeling into these 3 buckets. It's either pleasurable, it's painful, or it's neutral.
You said neutral or neutral?
Neutral. Neither pain nor pleasure. Then the third one is discrimination. So this is really important too. Discrimination is that mental factor that apprehends the distinctive characteristics of an object and can distinguish one thing from another. So it's that kind of like a way of sorting and dissecting things, putting things into little buckets, right? So this mental factor of discrimination would enable us to distinguish, two people from, I'm not gonna, you wouldn't mix up your mother with your father, or your son with your daughter, or your, a banana from an apple, whatever it is, right? It's discrimination is looking at the specific characteristics of an object and being able to say, oh, well, if it meets those characteristics, then it must be, it's an iPhone. If it has other characteristics, oh, it's a Android or something, right? Whatever it is. Discrimination happens all the time, right? 24 hours a day, all of these aggregates are firing, so to speak. Right? So discrimination allows us to pick up on the characteristics of an object and apply a definition to it. Miscellaneous factors, that includes all of the other mental factors other than feeling and discrimination, which we just talked about. So this is like the big hodgepodge. It's all of your feelings, it's all of your attitudes, it's your views, right? So it's ways of thinking. That would include like stereotypes and the like, as well as abstract composites such as, which is interesting, karma, or the latencies of the afflictions. All of that kind of gets lumped together in miscellaneous factors. So obviously there's a ton to unpack there. But again, from the perspective of meditation on the self, then, as we go through each of these areas, then for miscellaneous factors, and remember that it's your emotions, your attitudes, your viewpoints, it's all of that conceptual thought, okay? And then finally, there's the primary consciousnesses. And so there's one for each of the physical sense objects. So primary consciousness, and that would include the visual sphere, right? So the visual consciousness that is aware of colors and shapes, right? And then the auditory consciousness that's aware of sound. And then the olfactory consciousness that's aware of smell. And then the gustatory consciousness that's aware of taste. And then the tactile primary consciousness that's aware of tangibles, right? Something that you can touch. And then finally, there's the mental consciousness that's aware of mental phenomena, mental events, okay? So we're going to go through each of these, again, in greater detail as when we go through the sevenfold typology. But so that's the little review of the 5 aggregates. So it's form, feeling, discrimination, all of the miscellaneous factors, and then the primary consciousnesses, which tie all this together, right? 5 aggregates. So extremely, extremely important topic to understand before we move on. And so there are other ways of thinking about, how the self and by extension how phenomena exist. So you may also have heard of the 12 sources and the 18 constituents. So without going into these in too much detail, this is and also a very valuable way of analyzing things. So for the 12 sources, and it's kind of similar to what we just talked about with the 5 aggregates, but the 12 sources helps us understand the relationship between each of these cognitive faculties, right? We just listed those, to its corresponding object that it cognizes, okay? So, what's interesting, okay, so for example, and then, so we talked about how there's the eye, how the eyes, okay, so for each of these cognitive faculties, they have, an observed object. So we talked about how the eye observes, form, right? Colors and shapes. Okay, so for form, we talked about the ear, the observed object of the ear, it's going to be sounds, how the observed object of the nose, cognitive faculty is odors, tongue is tastes, body or tactile is tangibles, and how the mental cognitive faculties observed object is going to be phenomena. So what I wanted to point out here is that when we talk about these cognitive faculties, so you might think, oh, the eyeball, right? The actual sense faculty refers to the physical sense organ, but actually that's not the case. So for each of these, for eye, ears, nose, tongue, and the body or tactile, is not referring to the gross physical sense organ, but instead to a very subtle inner faculty. It's like a clear matter, is the way it was described in one of the texts, that resides within the physical sense organ itself. So just something to keep in mind. And so it's this very subtle sense faculty that is receptive to its observed object. Okay? So really cool, really, really interesting. So, when you think of the precious human rebirth, right? Because you've got all these cool cognitive faculties, you've got the gross, gross physical faculty, you also have these subtle cognitive faculties. And through those doorways, so to speak, right? Each of these is going to connect with its respective observed object, right? It all pulls together, and then you're walking, talking, drinking, and thinking, right? Okay, and so then to take this, one step further, when we talk about the 18 constituents, which includes all permanent and impermanent phenomena, we would just add to this analysis the the corresponding apprehending consciousness. Okay, so I think if we're going through the slide deck, so there is actually a slide for this, which is somewhere. Where is the slide? I think I made a slide, did I? It's not the second one. Maybe I didn't. I think I didn't. Okay, sorry. It was very late at night. It was late. Okay. So let's just, before, that was already a lot of information, right? And why don't we just stop for like 5 minutes. We're going to do a little touch-in, who am I, kind of meditation. And so just what I was hoping we could do is just go through each of these, you can do this by yourself, but let's think about each of these from the perspective either of the 5 aggregates. That's probably a really good starting point. Go through each of these: form, feeling, discrimination, miscellaneous factors, primary consciousness. We'll just spend 5 minutes, just go through and identify, each of these processes as it occurs in your mind, right? So let's say you're sitting down to meditate on the self. And so, you're going to see, well, how does this eye cognitive faculty, that very subtle eye sense faculty, how does it observe its object, colors and shapes? How does that trigger an associated eye consciousness, right? So then go through each of these different avenues, just watch your mind, okay? See how your mind makes discriminations, those fine differences between any of these, colors and shapes and sounds, right? Think about how that triggers different emotional reactions and how that's colored as either how you paint that experience as pleasurable, painful, or neutral, yeah? And then thinking through these different types of consciousness, mental as well as sensory. Okay. So I hope that's helpful, just again, by way of perhaps of a review, but when you sit down to do a little meditation on the self, identifying, who am I? This is a good way to do that type of meditation, because you'll see that each moment, of experience is imbued with all of these different factors coming together to define a moment of experience, right? Okay, so we are going to take a look at one other way in which we can think of phenomena, and breaking that down into the different types of objects that can be used as examples of these phenomena, and then relating that to the cognizer, or the mind that is interacting and apprehending this particular type of object. So this would be the slide. There is actually a slide for this one. That would be slide number 2, please. So here we have 3 different types of phenomena. The first being evident, or known as, referred to as evident phenomena. So these are phenomena that can easily be perceived. And so in the last column, we have examples of, or the definition. So evident objects, those would include external objects that we can feel, taste, touch, bump into, external sense objects that we just talked about, as well as the internal objects. So those would be, for example, feelings, right? We can all feel suffering. We can all feel joy and happiness, right? And so what type of awareness, what type of mind, what type of cognizer brings that, interacts with those phenomena? So that's the definition of a direct, reliable cognizer. So a direct, reliable cognizer is one that interacts with these evident phenomena. Then the second classification, second category, is known as slightly obscure phenomena. So these are phenomena that cannot be directly perceived, with the sense consciousnesses. Instead, we interact with those, we get to know those through inferential cognizers, which operate based on valid factual reasons and based on authoritative testimony. Authoritative testimony referring to scriptural references, basically the words of like the Buddha. And so those would include topics such as subtle impermanence or selflessness, right? So anything that you're going to get at through conceptual thought, right? So it's an inferential cognizer. And so, if you've remember from the sevenfold typology, I think maybe, or if you had a chance to look at it, you'll notice that we're going through, the first, the direct, reliable cognizer, and then the inferential cognizer. These are all on the list. So finally, we've got the third type of phenomena is very obscure phenomena. And so again, that's not something that you can get at through your sense consciousnesses, but instead through inferential, reliable cognizers by authoritative testimony. So this is a little bit different from so slightly obscure objects of knowledge and very obscure objects of knowledge differ in terms of their accessibility, so to speak, and the type of cognizer. A slight difference in these two. Right? And so the example given was karma. Karma is very, very hard to understand. Okay, so again, I think that's just a really important way to, because there are just so many nuances here, but this is a beautiful way to just categorize all of these different types of objects of knowledge and boiling it all down into the big 3 and how we interact with them. Right? And so, when you think about your own experience, all of this comes back to our own experience, right? So how do we, in our own minds, how do we interact with these different kinds of objects of knowledge, right? So we all have encounters with these subjects, right? And we all have, in our minds, we have these direct, reliable cognizers, right? Direct perceivers, and we have inferential cognizers, and this is going on all the time, right? This is not just stuff in a book. This is how we relate to the world around us and ourselves. Okay, so just moving on in this little background, setting the stage for talking about the sevenfold typology. I just wanted to touch on. Maybe we should just touch on the definition of the mind, right? Definition of the mind, or if you want to use the word consciousness. Unfortunately, there are a lot of synonyms, and so that can be kind of confusing, but we're using awareness, mind, consciousness, and knower synonymously for the purposes of this presentation. Okay, so I know Gishima went through this, but I thought I would just touch on it one more time for those of you who maybe didn't attend the previous classes. But the definition of consciousness is something that is clear and knowing, or clear and aware. Okay, so the definition of an awareness, consciousness, is a knower, right? It's a knower. Okay, so there's that sense of something, of agency, of an active engagement, right? An active mental process in this, or not just mental, but not just conceptual, right? So it's conceptual and sensory, right? Okay, so when we say that the definition of consciousness, of a mental consciousness in particular, is that which is clear and knowing, then that eliminates the sense consciousnesses. Okay. So when we talk about something being clear, then what does that really mean? So clear refers to the mind's quality of serving to reflect any phenomenon that appears to it. Right? So whether it's form, color, sound, music, taste, etc., or some kind of thought or feeling. So then the mind is that quality of or that ability to be open to all of these types of objects, right? So it's the objects appearing to the mind. Okay, that's that quality of being clear. And then knowing, which is also translated sometimes as illuminating, or but kind of the better, I think, way of understanding that is just to be aware of something, right? And so it's that ability for something to arise due to the clear nature of the mind, and then the awareness is what we talked about, the way in which the object apprehends the way in which the consciousness apprehends the object, the phenomena. Okay, so that's the whirlwind tour about this definition of clear and being aware. Okay, so then we can dive into like a little overview of the sevenfold typology. So what is the sevenfold typology? Basically, it's a way, again, of understanding how consciousness, these different types of consciousness, right? These different aspects of consciousness. Okay, and so in the handout for this class, the presentation that was put together by Geshe Dorje Damdol, then that was the link that was provided, in the calendar description. You all have that very detailed text. And so I thought that, and Gishima already started talking about direct valid perceivers. She went through, I think the first of these, we started talking about sense direct perceivers. But let me just go through and give you the big overview. And so we've got one slide for each of these definitions, so that you have a sense of, what each of these are and where we're going, right? Because this is going to take a while to get through all of these, I guess. So starting with the direct perceiver. So that would be on slide 3. A direct perceiver is an awareness that knows its objects directly without a conceptual appearance of its observed object. Okay, so direct perceiver is one that does not involve thinking, imagining, or remembering. Right? So it's a mental type of, excuse me, it's not a mental or conceptual perceiver. Instead, this definition of a direct perceiver is only an awareness that directly cognizes the object, and the object is going to be a sense object. Okay, so that's pretty easy, right? Then what's the opposite of a direct perceiver? Then as we were talking about just a minute ago, right? It's that inferential cognizer, which is an awareness that understands its observed object through a conceptual appearance. Okay, so it operates using these mental images of the object and by means of an inference. Okay. So a valid, unmistaken type of inference, right? And so that makes sense, right? Because just a minute ago we were talking about inferential cognizers being the way in which we can understand or access these slightly obscure objects, such as subtle impermanence and selflessness, and how they, through conceptual thought and analysis, then we can also come to understand the very obscure objects of knowledge. Right? So that's how I'm trying to tie all this together, so you don't think I'm just going in circles. There is a progression here, right? Okay, so then the third of these is we're on subsequent cognizers. So it's an awareness that realizes an existent object that has already been realized. So it's like the second moment of consciousness. Following, in this case, it could be a conceptual or non-conceptual reliable cognizer. Right? Then a correct assumption. Again, we do all of these all the time without, realizing that this is what's going on upstairs, right? A correct assumption then is a conceptual awareness that correctly apprehends its object as a result of having read or heard an explanation, but it doesn't like 100% get to the to ascertain the object, right? It gets really close, like you think, yeah, that's probably well, no, it's not the same as doubt. So, so I shouldn't say that, but it's a conceptual awareness that gets you, maybe 90% of the way, but it's not a direct understanding. Okay, it's not a direct perception, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, an attentive awareness, inattentive awareness. Okay, inattentive awareness is a direct perceiver to which its apprehended object clearly appears, but it's not ascertained. Okay, so the example given was, like you're watching a movie, and so, maybe somebody sitting next to you was having a little side conversation about the movie, like, oh, that actor is, so gorgeous or something, right? And so you're vaguely aware that something is going on, but you're not really sure what they're talking about. You're not really paying attention. You're trying to focus on the movie, right? So that's kind of inattentive awareness. There's something going on. You're vaguely aware of it, but yeah, you're not there yet. Okay, so then deluded doubt. Like that's kind of that one's pretty obvious. So deluded doubt is just you're thinking about different, maybe different choices, or you're not quite sure if this is the right decision to make. And in this context, though, it's specifically related to like understanding, maybe a Dharma point, like your past and future lives. Yeah, maybe they exist, maybe they don't exist, right? So that's deluded doubt. So you're tending towards the wrong conclusion. So you're either tending towards the right conclusion, the wrong conclusion, or I think you're just like totally confused. The last one is a wrong awareness, okay? A wrong awareness is either a conceptual or non-conceptual consciousness that incorrectly apprehends the observed objects, okay? So a wrong awareness or a wrong sensory awareness could be a hallucination, hearing voices when there's nobody there. A wrong conceptual awareness could be the view that impermanent things are permanent. Okay, so you want to give an example of a wrong sensory awareness? Just anything? What's a wrong sensory awareness?
Thinking you see someone and they're not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thinking you see somebody and they're not there.
Or possibly the way we concretize ourselves.
The way, what yourself?
Concretize.
Concretize, is that a new word?
No.
I like that. Okay, reify, concretize, how we think of ourselves. There could be a wrong conceptual awareness. Yeah, thinking of ourselves or other phenomena as being truly existent, right? Top of the, yeah.
Would this include if you saw somebody and you thought it was somebody else and then it turned out not to be? Is that
I'd put
fall
that
into this?
Yeah, sure. Wrong sensory awareness. Yeah.
What would you consider if someone's like having a stroke and they're like, think they're smelling burning bread, but they're actually like, but their brain thinks they're smelling bread? Would that be a wrong sensory awareness because the nose isn't actually smelling anything and the brain's creating a falsified cognition?
If they had a stroke?
Yeah.
Oh. They had a stroke, so then that's an impaired gross sensory faculty,
Okay.
right? And so it's, but I think, it's along the same lines. It's a wrong sense consciousness. It's, so, I can go with that, why not? Okay, so then we're gonna get into, but we're gonna talk about the, somewhere in here, the 4 causes of error, 4 for mistaken, because that came up, I know that came up in the last class, so I wanted to go through that. So before we move on to that, so we just breezed through the 7-fold typology, right? So direct perceiver, inferential cognizer, subsequent cognizer, correct assumption, inattentive awareness, deluded doubt, and a wrong awareness. So out of these, when we talk about reliable, valid cognizers, which of these are considered reliable? Those would be direct perception. I think there may be a difference in translation, unfortunately. Direct perception, so we could say direct perceiver. Direct perception, inferential cognizer, that's number 2, and then the subsequent cognizer. These are considered reliable, unmistaken. And then to contrast, by way of contrast, the invalid or unreliable types are correct assumption, the inattentive awareness, doubt, and wrong consciousness. And His Holiness defines invalid, unreliable as something that, a type of awareness that doesn't get us closer to fulfilling our goal. And I think it must have been Venerable Thupten too, and she gave the example of like you go to the grocery store and you're trying to buy an orange, but because of causes and conditions and things going on up here, you end up buying the grapefruit instead of the orange. Like, or maybe somebody told you to go to the grocery store and buy and orange, but you didn't really know what an orange was, and so you're standing there full of doubt. Which one is the orange? What does a grapefruit look like? And you buy the wrong one. Yeah? So, okay. All right, so here's the pop quiz. I don't know if this is fair, but we just went through all the definitions, right? You studied this a little bit with Gishima. So, did I put this on the slide?
Is that check?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I'm so brilliant. Man. I'm just kidding. Okay, a cognition. So we're filling in the blanks, right? So for each blank has one of the corresponding consciousnesses that we just talked about, right? So a cognition, thinking that there is no fire on a smoky mountain pass. Which of the 7 would that be? It's
The last one.
wrong consciousness.
How about inferred?
Okay, so what we're pointing out in this sentence, right? No fire on a smoky mountain pass. It's supposed to just mean that, you're looking out there and you don't see it.
Oh.
Okay? There's no cognition thinking, there's no fire. It's smoky means there's smoke on the mountain, and right? And then you're thinking, oh, well, there's no fire. Okay.
Might one be deluded?
Deluded doubt? Well, in this case, it's supposed to be direct. The answer is actually just a direct or a distorted cognition. So distorted cognition meaning that you're looking at it, but you're not coming to the right perceptual definition.
Anila, you need a buzzer for when we're wrong.
All right, secondly, a cognition that thinks there may or may not be a fire, though there probably is a fire because I see the smoke, right? What else causes smoke? What would that be?
Deluded doubt.
Right, doubt, because you're not sure. A cognition with conviction that there is a fire on the pass, but without 100% being convinced, right? Without ascertaining it to be there is
Like a perceiver?
well, no, because it's a conceptual awareness, right? You're thinking it through, right? So we're on the conceptual awareness side, and you're thinking you're tending towards the right conclusion, right? You're thinking, okay, the cause of smoke is fire, but you're not like 100% sure.
Correct assumption?
Yeah. So it would be a correct assumption. And then a cognition ascertaining that there is a fire by reason of the smoke. So here the most important part of the sentence is by reason of the smoke, right? And you ascertain that there is a fire, right? Those are all the key words. So what would that have to be?
Is that subsequent?
No, that's the next one.
Well, at least I don't get a buzzer.
That's right.
That's is
So
that inferential?
Yes, inferential, very good, okay. And then the second moment of such an inferential cognition, that's a subsequent cognition. And then a cognition clearly realizing the presence of fire is like you're 100% on it. Like, oh man, I can see it, smell it.
Direct awareness.
Yeah, direct perception or direct awareness. And then finally, this one is a cognition with a clear appearance of a fire that does not ascertain it to be a fire is,
Wrong consciousness.
it's actually, where is our wrong consciousness? Do we have that one? I don't know where that one went. Because here the answer was indeterminate perception. Indeterminate perception is actually the translated in as inattentive awareness. Well, I don't know where we're wrong or maybe I missed a sentence or something. Okay, so anyway. So I hope that was like helpful to wake you guys up. Yeah,
Venerable Tendrol, may we have a question?
sure.
So how is the last condition different from the wrong condition?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about inattentive awareness or indeterminate perception, it seems to me that that's probably more related to sense consciousnesses, whereas a wrong awareness could be either a wrong sensory awareness or a wrong conceptual awareness.
It also could be because it says a cognition with a clear appearance. So maybe the word clear is inferring that the cognizer is seeing it as it is, but just doesn't understand it to be fire. Or is like doesn't inattentive to it being fire.
Well, that's, yeah, definitely part of it. So an inattentive awareness, so it is a direct perceiver, so it's, right, so it's definitely apprehending. Oh, sorry. It's a little bug. Yeah. So the object clearly appears, but again, it's not identified all the way, right? Whereas a wrong awareness is completely, you don't have that, right? You don't have that clear, direct the clear appearance the way inattentive awareness does, right? Wrong awareness is it's conceptual or non-conceptual consciousness, but they're just like way off track, not even close. Okay. All right, so we started talking about direct valid perceivers, right? We talked about, right, we talked a lot about non-mistaken, right, the definition. So sorry, the definition of a direct valid perceiver, which is synonymous with direct perception, is, straight out of the text, a non-mistaken knower that is free from conceptuality. Okay, so we're talking about non-conceptual consciousnesses. And it's a non-mistaken knower, right? And so there was a long discussion about what non-mistaken means. So non-mistaken means with respect to the appearing object, right? That object, the observed object, the appearing object that's non-mistaken. And so mistaken in this sense means any consciousness that is affected by one of the four causes of error. Okay, so there are actually four different adventitious causes of error that can, so if these are, any one of these are present, then that can result in a mistaken, what's known as a mistaken consciousness. Okay. So I think there's a slide for this. That would be slide number right after the check. So slide number 11, please. The four adventitious causes of error. All right. So this is really helpful to understand, because as we continue exploring each of these 7 types of awareness, then when we talk about things being mistaken or non-mistaken, I think this helps us get a better understanding of what it means to say that something is mistaken. Okay. So the first is the cause of error. So therefore, right, cause of error existing in the object, on the basis, on the abode, or the immediately preceding condition. So the cause of error existing in the object is when a consciousness perceives the example was a circle of fire due to a firebrand. You know, it's like a torch that's got a flame at the end. But really, it could be anything. It could be a flashlight, right? If you're in the dark room and you spin the flashlight around, you would get the same effect, right? It looks like there's a continuous circle of light, whereas, you know, in actuality, that's not really necessarily the case, right? So anyway, the point is that the cause of error is existing in the object until your consciousness, you know, becomes aware of that phenomena and is mistaken as to how it exists, right? So you've got this appearance, but the way that the object exists does not match the appearance. Okay, so then the second one is the cause of error existing in the basis. And here, when we talk about basis, we're talking about that sense faculty, that subtle sense faculty. Any one of the ones that we were talking about, right? So it could be an eye consciousness which sees a single moon. This is a traditional example. You look at outside at a dark night and you see one big moon, but actually because of your sense, the problem with your eye sense faculty, eye sense power, then you actually see two moons, right? We talked about, you know, if you had jaundice or something and you look around and everything looks, you know, yellow. So that's a problem with, again, going back to the basis is the eye sense power, right? The sense power itself, the sense faculty. Then the cause of error existing in the abode, I guess more like in the environment. So the example here is an eye consciousness which sees trees moving when you're riding in a car. So let's say you're driving down the road, you know, and everything to the side of you looks like it's moving, but you're kind of staying still, right? You know, you see all the cars or the trees going by, but from your perspective, you know, it feels like you're just in the car, right? Everything's going around. So that's the cause of error existing in the abode. And then finally, the cause of error existing in the immediately preceding condition would be like for a mental event, a mental condition, a moment of mental awareness, then that would be, you know, the time, like if we're at time zero, sorry, if we're at time one, then it would be time zero, right? So just the preceding moment of awareness, okay? So do you want to think of an example of, let's do just, we don't have to do all of them because I think we've talked about them with Geshe-ma quite a bit, but what about the cause of error existing in the abode? You think of another one where, based on, you know, your overall context, overall situation, that you might, you know, have some kind of mistaken awareness.
Daniela, what is abode means? I'm not familiar with this word, and I look at the translation, doesn't mean much to me either.
Yeah, it's a confusing word. I think it basically means like the environment, you know, that you're in, the situation in that sense, like a place. Yeah,
Thank you.
if that helps. Kind of like, I think, associated with the idea of dwelling, remaining in a place, right?
Yeah, that's the translation I got from Google Translate.
Yeah. So the example was an eye consciousness which sees trees moving when you're riding in a boat or car.
I can only think of like a really complex one.
Okay.
So if you're like standing outside of a train, there's this like strange technicality. Like if you're standing outside the train and someone's standing inside the train and someone bounces a ball on the tracks, you're going to perceive it to move, I think it's slightly slower than the person on the train. So the person on the train perceives the ball moving faster, and that causes like a weird time distortion because the person on the train technically experienced time faster than you. But that's
The train's moving?
yeah, the train's moving.
Huh.
It's like a really small, it's like milliseconds. It's like a weird physics thing, but that's technically like because they're on the train, they're not perceiving the ball moving at probably the speed that the user's moving it at.
Yeah.
So
because
that's-
the train's moving.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whose perspective would be mistaken in that sense?
The person on the train.
The person on the train because they're going. Okay.
Because their
That's fascinating.
environment's changing. Yeah.
Got it. Wow.
I'm not really sure if this ties into what we're talking about, but I recently found out that our eyes can focus in on something, but that's it. And our minds kind of fill in the rest of the blanks. Like we think we're seeing like this panoramic, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that tie into anything?
Yeah,
It could.
the
Yeah.
body be considered an abode?
In some contexts, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, could it be as simple as like, you know, a lot of background noise and you're confusing it with something that you're trying to perceive, you know, like trying to hear somebody and it's just interfering with a bunch of other people talking at the same time. Would that count? Or is that something else?
Is that a source of error? Is that a mistaken?
Well, I mean,
Perception?
there might be like a lot of static or a construction site or something like that, and you're trying to make out what somebody's saying or something else in the environment. You can't quite make it out because there's a lot of distortion. I don't know, just wondering where that fits in.
Well, let's see, is the cause of error existing in the object? Maybe. Consciousness perceiving it. That would cause you to misperceive something, misunderstand the situation, or not get at what you were. Yeah, so you're not, let's say you were trying to hear something, but because of all of the background noise, maybe you hear something other than what was intended or something like that. It could be. Yeah. Yeah.
Venerable Tendrol, could
Uh-huh.
the desert mirage,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. Mirage in the desert. Yep, all of those are good. Okay.
Karen, also give the example here, fog.
Fog, that's good. Yeah, very good. Okay. All right, so let's just push on a little bit more. I know this is a lot, but we're making some progress here. Are we? You know, those late nights, you're like, oh yeah, we could just do this and this and this. Not.
So abode is environment, object is the object itself, and bias is your own like misinformation.
Basis.
Basis.
Is a problem with the sense faculty itself.
Okay.
Basis, yep. Okay, so again, just a couple of more definitions along the same lines. I promise you all of this is going to pay off at some point. You know, these are just like tantalizing little tips, and I encourage you to go back and study these in much greater detail. When we talk about things, talking about different types of knowers here. Well, this is a lot. Okay, well, we're going to do this anyway. We've got like half an hour, right? Hang on one second. might be too much. And I'm going to try to choose which one's more important. All right, we're going to do this anyway. We can always come back, because I'm not going to be here next week, so that's why I'm just trying to shuffle things around. Okay, so let's talk about determinative knowers. I want to just, again, emphasize the difference between the sense consciousnesses and mental consciousnesses, right? So you hear this term, free from conceptuality, right? Free from conceptuality, which when we look at this definition of direct valid perceiver, right, we said it's a non-mistaken knower. We just spent all this time unpacking what non-mistaken means, right? And then the other part of the definition is free from conceptuality. So what does that really mean, free from conceptuality, okay? So when you approach, any of the definitions that follow, we're going to have to tease apart every single word in the definition. That's what we're trying to do. So from the Prasangika perspective, free from conceptuality means free from being a determinative knower that apprehends a sound generality and a meaning generality as suitable to be mixed, right? So it's, maybe I'll just repeat that. Free from conceptuality, right? Because we're talking about direct valid perceivers. Free from conceptuality means it's free from being a determinative knower that apprehends a sound generality and a meaning generality as suitable to be mixed. And don't worry, we're going to go through this in 30 seconds. So a direct perceiver is non-determinative. Again, another, catch another term here. Thought consciousnesses are determinative knowers, okay? And so we had talked about that a few minutes earlier. A determinative knower is a consciousness that makes these discriminations, that discriminates, okay? So it'll say like, this is a cup, this is a phone, right? So this is such and such, and that is such and such. It's that determinative process that engages in analysis through discrimination, okay? So we're talking about direct perceivers as being non-determinative, right? It doesn't go through that process of slicing and dicing, right? It's the thought consciousnesses that are considered determinative knowers because it's, the part of, those are the types of consciousnesses that perform that discriminative analysis, okay? So let's explore that for 30 seconds. We talk about determinative knowers. Again, these are only apply to thought conceptual consciousnesses, okay? So that means we're talking about two concepts, sound generality. I'm sure some of you have studied this before, so bear with me. Sound generality is, let's say, you learn a new word for the first time. You hear the word, right? But you don't know the meaning. Okay, so it's literally just the sound of the word, right? So if I say, a word like in a different language, right? If I say prego, right? In Italian, I think it means like please or something. Or arigato, right? If you're speaking Japanese. Okay, so it's just the sound of the word. This is really not that hard. The meaning generality then is the meaning of the word, right? So it's like the definition of the word that you just learned. So arigato means like thank you, right? Chotse in Tibetan means table, right? So there's a little nuance here though. So let's say the definition of the word. And so when you hear the word, that the trigger is hearing the sound of the word, then what arises to, again, we're talking about thought consciousness, conceptual consciousness, right? So what appears to that mental awareness then is a mental image, okay? It's the mental image that appears to the mind, okay? So the meaning generality is the mental image that appears to the mind based on the trigger being the sound of the word, the label, okay? So although it's not the actual object, this meaning generality, this mental image, is what's apprehended by this determinative knower, okay? So we've got two things so far. We've got the sound generality, meaning the sound of the word, and the meaning generality being this mental image that appears when you hear the word. And then the third concept that we were talking about is this idea of these two things coming together as being suitable. The term that's always used is suitable to be mixed, which is kind of confusing. I don't know what. But anyway, suitable to be mixed just means that it's the thought consciousness, right? The determinative knower, the thought consciousness that apprehends, puts these things together. That's what we're trying to say. Basically, associates the sound with the meaning, right? So the sound of the label, the word, and its associated mental image that's those coming together that's considered to be suitable to be mixed. Okay, so it's that process of bringing these two together. Okay, and again, the important part, an important point, the meaning generality is this mental image. Right? So you're not directly apprehending the object itself. It's always mediated by this mental image. Okay, and so. So, it's good just as like a thought experiment when we are meditating, right? You take a minute to try to think of maybe, again, just walking us through the process, think of a new word, maybe in a different language. How does that feel? What's the experience when you hear a word that you don't know the meaning? Then you do, let's say, learn the meaning, right? Think of, and then this goes into, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, which we're not going to do. But, did we do that? No, I didn't, I skipped that part. But, what was I going to say? Yeah, so go through and then think of the mental object. So you think of like a new word, then you think of the definition, then you think how it points to definiendum. What does it point to? What does it reference, right? So the word table has a definition of something with a top and some form of legs to hold it up, probably. And so, table would be the table itself, right? Then has a definition, and it has a word to refer to that object, okay? But when we're talking specifically about the thought consciousness, it's the sound together with this mental image, right? The mental image not being the thing itself, but the definition of the object, okay? All right. So,
Venerable Tendrol, so the determinative knowers, does it have to be associated with sound generality, or it can be associated with any other sense generality?
No, it's sound, because there's this big emphasis on talking about language, language and conventional reality being founded on this association in terms of language as a way of referring to phenomena. So yeah, no, it's specifically sound.
Bless you.
Case, yeah.
Dijichenang.
Yeah. Okay. So just as a recap, when we're talking about direct valid perceivers, because that's the topic we're on right now, these are non-determinative, okay? Direct valid perceiver is sense consciousness, okay? And so when we move on to the next of the 7 types of awarenesses. Then we'll be talking about inferential cognizers, and those are determinative knowers. Okay, so that's kind of where we are. So there are three types of, where's B? Huh. Direct valid perceivers. Anyway, we're on, I think I'm missing one here.
There's 4 of them.
What did I miss? I have sense.
Sense, mental,
Men-
cognizant, yoga.
Okay. So we're on sense direct perceivers, right? So the definition of a sense direct perceiver is a non-mistaken, non-conceptual knower that is produced upon the aggregation of 3 conditions. Okay? So we've already gone through non-mistaken, non-conceptual, produced upon the aggregation of 3 conditions. What does that mean? So there are 3 of these: the observed object condition, the uncommon empowering condition, and the immediately preceding condition. Is there a slide for that?
I think that conditions.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so what are we trying to understand there? Is how does our interaction with sense objects, right, give rise to a corresponding sense consciousness bearing an image of the object? So this could be any of the sensory consciousnesses, sense consciousnesses, right? Interacting with any of those 5 sense objects that we talked about earlier. And so it's based on these 3 conditions, okay? So let's say, just to take a simple example, because it's almost lunchtime and we're hungry, what about like eating a pizza, or even just seeing a pizza, right? So you're going to just take a second to think about that delicious pizza, right? And so there's an aspect of a visual perception, right? So you're going to see what the big round thing, let's say it's a traditional pizza, a big round thing with the marinara sauce and the mozzarella cheese, right? So there's the visual experience, and then there's the smell, right? Because there's the delicious, cheesy, yummy, yeasty smell. And then there's the touch when you grab hold of the warmth or the heat of the pizza, right? And then the taste of the pizza, like that's all coming together, right? So this is all at one instant. Then actually, your mind can only hold one thing, one object at a time, but it's switching back and forth extremely, quickly. So you get the full pizza experience, even though your mind might be, is fast tracking, right? Okay, so each of these different objects that you're looking at and smelling, touching, tasting, all of that comes together as the corresponding sense faculties, are being triggered, and that is going to give rise subsequently to the experience of the other aggregates, right? So so the first is the observed object condition, right? So the observed object condition is, in this case, we're talking about visible form, right? Visible form, right? Observed object condition is the visible form. So it's that which principally and directly produces a sense direct perceiver apprehending a form as having the aspect of that form. Okay, so it's a direct perceiver, sense direct perceiver apprehending a form as having the aspect of that form. So this is, and then Lati Rinpoche wrote a phenomenal short book called Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. Came out many, many, many years ago. Definitely a key text that you would want to get a hold of and read slowly. He defines this as he says the observed object condition of a sense direct perceiver apprehending form is perceived as the form itself, right? So, because the consciousness is produced through the force of the form's casting its aspect to it. So this is really important. So he's saying that this, the observed object condition, right? So the pizza, right? We're looking at the pizza. It's a sense direct perceiver, right? So let's just, the sense direct perceiver, that's what we're talking about, this type of knower, right? It's the observed object condition is the pizza, and the awareness itself takes on the aspect of the form that it's perceiving, right? So in this case, it's the pizza. So the consciousness, that's awareness of the pizza, is produced through the force of the pizza's casting its appearance to it. So there's what I'm trying to point out is that there's this interaction or interplay between, the consciousness of the perceiving mind, right, and then the object itself. There's that interplay, a dynamic interplay, right? So you've got the object, and then the consciousness perceives the object, and then it takes on that aspect, right? Right. So really interesting, right? Because what was the definition of mind? The definition of consciousness that we talked about at the beginning of the talk, right? Clear, right? One of them was clear and aware, right? So when we're talking about this kind of direct valid perceiver for the observed object condition, there's that sense of the mind being receptive, right? Clear in the sense of being receptive to what is being, what it's coming into contact with, those appearances, okay? So I thought that was really, really, really nice. So that's the observed object condition. Then the second is the uncommon empowering condition. So it's sometimes also translated as dominant condition. So it's the sense faculty, that subtle sense faculty itself, okay? So the observed object condition was the object, right, that you're observing. Then the uncommon empowering condition is the sense faculty itself. Okay, and so our text says it's that which principally and directly produces a sense direct perceiver, apprehending a form as operating in its own sphere. So that's kind of a mouthful. So Lati Rinpoche says it's the eye, for example, the eye sense power is the uncommon empowering condition of a sense direct perceiver apprehending a form. Okay, so in a more succinct way, it's just the sense power that's the uncommon empowering condition of this associated, right? Because we talked about how each sense direct perceiver is associated with its own type of sense object. And so it's apprehending that related type of object. Okay, so not so hard. So it's the sense faculty, right? You can just boil that whole thing down to just, it's the sense faculty, okay? That's the uncommon empowering condition. So we got the object, we got the sense faculty, and then the immediately preceding condition, and I guess we'll have to wrap it up here. Immediately preceding condition is that moment of attention that took place just an instant before. So Lati Rinpoche says it's a consciousness which arises just immediately preceding a sense direct perceiver apprehending a form, and which engages the mind in that form. So it's that moment in time just before where you are now, right? That's why it says immediately preceding condition, right? So you have to have that continuity though. So these three things come together, and then we can say that you have a sense. You're talking only about a sense direct perceiver. Okay, sense direct perceiver comes together upon the aggregation or the coming together of these three conditions. Okay, it's non-mistaken, it's non-conceptual, and it's based on these three conditions. So that's the sense direct perceiver. And we talked about how there are 5 of these sense direct perceivers. There's the visual, sense consciousness, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, and tactile. Yeah. So the next topic would then be the mental direct perceiver. Okay. And then, you know, within that discussion, then we could look at how the mental direct perceiver, what's the dominant condition? What's the immediately preceding condition? What's the objective condition in the case of the mental direct perceiver? Okay, so you can see where the discussion's going to go, right? So just to wrap up, where are we? Yeah, we're almost done. Like with a little recap for the sense direct perceivers. So it's a sense direct perceiver apprehending a sound is non-mistaken, non-conceptual knower, produced and dependent on its own uncommon empowering condition, which is the fill in the blank. But let's say it's a sound, sound, what would it be? What's the uncommon empowering condition?
The ear faculty.
Right. Okay, the ear sense power or the ear faculty. And what is the observed object condition?
Sound.
Right, sound, very good. The sound of the bell telling us that our class is over. Okay. So I think that gets you pretty much caught up. I will talk to Gishima to see where she wants to go with the conversation, but we've finished through the sense direct perceiver, so maybe she'll pick up with the mental direct perceiver, which is all of this gets more and more interesting. Very fascinating topic. Any questions? We have like no time.
So next Sunday, you are not going to be here. Is Geshama going to be Zoom only, or we can come here and watch from here?
You can come here, but she's not gonna be here.
I know she's not.
I'm gonna have everything set up like today.
Oh, so we can come
Yeah,
here.
everybody's welcome.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so everybody's welcome to come next Sunday, and we should probably pick up with the mental direct perceivers.
Thank you, Anila. Thank you, Chappelle.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Quick dedication of merit for all of the hard work that we did today to understand ourselves and our interactions with other people, other living beings, cars, buses, trucks, everything around us, right? So that we can better tame our minds, so that we can be the masters of our own destiny and go out and do good things. So if you have any questions, if anything that I said was unclear, feel free to reach out. I'm very willing to.
I have a question, but it's not anything to do with what we're talking about.
Oh, so should we end the class first, and then do you want to just talk? Okay,
No,
all
it's
right.
not a big deal. It's just like something that could be answered in 30 seconds.
Oh,
I know when you speak, there's 3 things that you should ask yourself first. Is it kind? But I can't remember the other 2. Is it kind? Is it necessary? And then there's one more. But I can't remember the other.
necessary. I don't know. The third one could
It's
be a
in one
lot
of
of
the
things.
Thank you.
Good motivation.
Maybe, is it helpful?
Is it helpful?
Yeah, I don't know if necessary includes.
Maybe.
Yeah, it could be helpful, valuable.
Is it, or is it true?
Oh, valid or invalid?
Yeah.
There you go.
That doesn't ring a bell. That's a good one.